Skip it up and that up. Okay, so I guess we'll start. More people will show up. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee out of my goofy glass mug here. And this is Erik Kain from Forbes magazine. He actually did an excellent article, which I had to use a lot of because there was so much going on. If I tried to, put things in my own words, I probably would have missed out. How many updates did you have in the end? Did you have more than 8, or did it stop at 8?
I had 8, and then a second post about the subreddit turning into Mr. Robot. But yeah, 8 in that article.
He had 8 updates. I've never seen that personally before. I'm sure maybe there'd be another time that happened, but I've never seen 8 updates for anything. Even like political news, I've never seen 8 updates on one article. There have been updates in articles, but not just in one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
Some places will try to make multiple articles out of it. It seemed more efficient to just keep updating the one and less confusing. And it was a confusing morning.
It was a very, very confusing. See, the funniest thing about me, and we'll talk about No Man's Sky in general, because you guys seen the article on that, and you know the whole thing. I personally think, and I'll ask you what you think. Do you think that someone just had a nervous breakdown at No Man's Sky and they were trying to cover it up, or do you think it was actually a hack?
It's so hard to say what actually, I hate to even speculate because, something doesn't seem right about the whole thing, but without, for all we know, it's still hacked and all their accounts are hacked. And we've never talked to any of them, on the phone, anybody at Hello Games. Nobody has come out, made a YouTube video saying that this is what's happened. So for all we know, those are all still fake tweets because there's no way to confirm a hack using the same social media that was hacked. There's just really no way to do that unless you come out and talk to somebody or show your face. So, at this point, who knows what's going on over there?
See, the weirdest thing to me about it is, and I believe you said the same thing too, is until this happened, there was absolutely no correspondence on either Sean Murray's Twitter or Hello Games Twitter. For Hello Games, at least I think it was in September. Sean Murray was mid to late August, and they said nothing, and then all of a sudden they're hacked out of no. I guess it could happen. Maybe because they've been negligent of their Twitter, it could happen. Believe me, I've dealt with that stuff before. I'm too loud, guys. Sorry, I'll lower myself and I'll bring him up a little bit too. But it was just so strange that it almost seems like they gave up on their accounts and there was nothing there, and then all of a sudden they come in over and then there's this massive hack and people are getting emails and the emails are different, like you said in your article. Like people were getting different emails. It wasn't like a robot sending out emails, which was kind of strange too. Like Kotaku got a different email than you.
Yeah, and that's what also makes this sort of hard to figure out, because the email that Kotaku posted seemed kind of out there, like it could be a hack or somebody, like a disgruntled employee. But the email I got was just very simple, like, no, it wasn't a hack. It was a disgruntled employee. We're trying to resolve it. That doesn't strike me as something that a hacked account emails out. It just seemed, it's too innocuous in a lot of ways. And so it's just kind of one of those situations where, if I just was going to guess completely, maybe the Kotaku email that they got, sort of a longer email, seems like something that could have been sent by a disgruntled employee or a hacker or somebody playing around. But the email I got was so different in tone. It was just very short, no, it wasn't a hack. It's a disgruntled employee and we're trying to fix it internally. I'm paraphrasing, but
I saw you screen capped it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the kind of email you send out if you're hacking somebody's account. Maybe the other ones were. Even if there was at some point a hack or some disgruntled employee got hold of their accounts and started posting stuff, it seems like at some point they figured that out and fixed it. And I feel like, and I can't say for sure, it feels like that email that I got and that Mashable got was like a legit email, even if the ones previous to that were hacked emails or somebody using the account. But of course, it's impossible to say. And then Hello Games, whatever happened, seems like they were backtracking somehow and covering something up, because that tweet that Sean Murray sent to Hello Games asking if they were still hacked and stuff, and then the Hello Games tweeting back. That is no way to act as a professional or as a business. It's so bizarre. Like, it leaves any possibility open. It leaves the possibility that it was Sean Murray that tweeted that.
Yeah.
You have to take their word, but we haven't spoken to anybody on the phone, and we haven't seen them say anything on a YouTube video or anything. So you can't take them at their word. They're being ridiculous. They're being shady, and it's too weird. The only time I've seen a company act so shady was a Kickstarter that I covered a few years ago by I think it was a Russian or Eastern European company, and they were super shady. It was really hard to get straight answers out of them, and that Kickstarter ended up being canceled by Kickstarter. But it's the same kind of behavior that, not giving real answers, having very strange explanations, and just the silence from Hello Games is really, at this point, it's very, very strange.
The first thing I thought when I saw Sean Murray's tweet to Hello Games, I'm like, you own the company. You run the company. Right. Why would you put that on Twitter? Why wouldn't you call and if you weren't at the office, say you were out doing something, be like, hey, what's going on? Why would you ask on Twitter? It was almost like they were putting on a show to show everyone, hey, we were hacked, guys. It wasn't us. Like, if my website was hacked, I'd be on the horn right now. If Review Tech USA was hacked, I'd be on the phone. I wouldn't be like, on Twitter asking. Well, actually, sometimes you could be on Twitter, they have support, but my situation's different. I don't own a game development company that I have a phone number directly to. It was just really weird all around. I mean, I take from it, and again, it's speculation. I have no proof. If anything, Erik has more information about it than I do. It's almost like someone was having an argument at the office. Someone snapped, and Anger wrote on Twitter, "No Man's Sky was a mistake," and everyone freaked out trying to cover it up. I could be 100% wrong. I don't know, but
it almost. I mean, again, you can only joke around about it at this point, but it does sort of feel like somebody like maybe Sean Murray, was in the middle of a real bad bender and just not doing so good, and drunk tweeted sad drunk tweeted that. It doesn't. I mean, usually when there's a hacked account, you see a lot more activity on that account, and there was only one tweet. It was quickly shut down, and yet then we have to accept that all their emails were also fake. Like even emails that my email came after their Twitter was made private and the tweet was taken down. So they obviously they got in there and they shut the Twitter down, but then they're saying that their email that came after that was part of a hack. So that, again, that doesn't make really very much sense chronologically. And what really baffles me is why not just call somebody? I mean, they've probably had 50 different people emailing them, asking them for a phone call. Why not do that? Why not get on Skype with somebody? Why not make a quick YouTube video and upload it just saying, hey, here's the story? Why is it so hard to just talk? Like, the whole problem with No Man's Sky, other than all the problems with the game, was the handling of the game after launch. It was not talking to fans, and it was not just getting out there and being transparent. And I really think they could have salvaged a lot of goodwill just by talking to people and working with people. I think people are as angry as people got over the game, I think overall fans can be very forgiving if you treat them with respect. And this is just another instance of not treating people who paid money for your game with respect, not treating people who could, in the media is a great outlet for you to say what you need to say. Like, why not partner with the media on this? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
When, beyond the situation that just happened, I'll talk about my take of No Man's Sky. When was your first experience with No Man's Sky? I know it's been hyped all hell for years. What did you think the first time you saw it, and when was the first time you saw it?
Like a trailer, you mean?
Yeah, like a trailer or a reveal or...
Oh, man. That was probably years ago when they first showed it. My first reaction was, that's really pretty. I love the art style. My second, once I heard that it was procedurally generated, I became really, really skeptical. Because I'm really skeptical of procedurally generated anything in games. I find that they are almost always worse than designed games. So
yeah, because
go ahead.
Oh, you can't control exactly what's going on in the game because the computer it's procedurally generated. Yeah,
right. There's the in procedural generated games. There's always this promise that there's sort of infinite possibility. but almost always it becomes a redundant experience. And compared to like actually well-designed and crafted levels, it's just not nearly as satisfying. So I got off the hype train for No Man's Sky pretty quickly, actually. And I think the other problem was that there wasn't a lot of explanation of what you're supposed to do in the game, and so I thought it looked cool, and I was still looking forward to playing it, but it was never. I never thought it would be like the Second Coming, you know. It just seemed like a lot of promise. Yeah, a lot of promises.
It's just, I would look at it, and they never had any kind of defined gameplay. Like, one time you'd watch it and they'd be like, oh, you're building and crafting. I'm like, all right, it's Minecraft in space. Another time you watch it, you'd see a little bit of combat. Okay, maybe it has a little couple first-person shooter elements. Then you would see, space it was never, I never understood the hype. I think, like, I would watch it and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, there's no definition to what this game truly is. And, then you would have Sean Murray in interviews. And in the interviews, he would say all these different things he would do, and there were in the end, like, example, the biggest thing was multiplayer, which you would think a game like that would be big on multiplayer, didn't even exist. Even if you found someone, which he said, oh, your chances of finding someone in the game is like, what do you say, less than 1% or something like that?
Yeah, well, yeah, really, really infinitesimally small, but
and people did find each other though, and they couldn't do anything.
Yeah, they couldn't see each other, and yeah, he really put his foot in his mouth in like truly epic ways with this one. It's strange. What was the point of that? I look back on the watch videos of all things he said that aren't true, and you wonder, like, why? Why say those things? I mean, why even go to the I mean, people would have been excited even if he didn't. If none of that stuff had been said, those people that were excited would still have been excited about the game. I don't know. I don't think you have to like pump up a game like that. I think people are excited because it looks cool. Like, it looks like a fun space exploration game. Like, if there's not going to be multiplayer, just say there's not going to be multiplayer.
I almost think it was too, people got really high. Yeah, Skype is being terrible right now. We're kind of hearing them pretty good. You can understand what you're saying. Sorry, it's just I can't control it. It's Skype. They're still understanding you though. There was a couple words that went in and out.
Sign language.
I think. I think a big part of it had to do too is Sony backing the game. I think people, it was insta faith because wow, Sony thinks this game is so good that they want it to be their console exclusive. It was on PC too, I know that, but it's so good they wanted to keep it off Microsoft's console. And then you had this unique. They're saying it's going to be this unique experience, and combining that together, it built. I don't think I've maybe you have ever seen hype for a game the way No Man's Sky was hyped. And from an unproven developer, too. I mean, what did they make? Like, movie-based games before this?
They made Joe Danger.
They made Joe Danger, okay.
Yeah. But they're a small studio. And the thing is Sony does a lot with indie developers. I mean, they have a whole program where they work with indie developers to get indie games onto their consoles. But usually they are still billed kind of as these smaller indie games. No Man's Sky was just that, just a smaller indie game that probably should have been sold for $20.
Yes.
But they built it and marketed it in such a way. I mean, I remember I went to the PlayStation Experience at the end of 2014, and there was actually like a concert at the end of the day that was like I didn't go to it, but it was a No Man's Sky concert. So they were going to show footage from the game and have live music, and like, I mean, it was just being billed like right up there with all that, with Uncharted 4 and Bloodborne and stuff. I mean, like, it was on par with those games, which, it wasn't fair to Hello Games really, or to anybody like watching. It was a really, and now Sony has totally just
distanced himself. They were like, it never happened. And that's where I kind of get annoyed at Sony. It's almost like Sony saw the hype trend. And they were like, I bet you before the hype, when Sony initially started working with them, I guarantee you the game maybe would have been $20 or $30. But then Sony saw the hype building, and they were like, cha-ching, we're gonna.
Yeah.
I remember there were articles coming out saying we confirmed the game's going to be $60, and I'm just like, unproven developer with a game that doesn't really have a solid, in my opinion, genre. When you look at it, and then you're going to charge $60. Why? Because people are hyped about it, and the media was singing its praises. I mean, there were some articles, man, that were touting the game to be like possibly the greatest game of all time, and I'm sure you've seen them too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, man. Now, would you think that Hello Games, do you think they could ever come back and have a chance to be a game developer that publishes another game, or do you think they're done?
Right now they're done. Like, unless they can come out of this and make changes, like they would have to come back from this. They'd have to start talking to people again. They'd have to release new content for the game, and they'd have to do some like legit mea culpa about how they've handled the whole thing. But I mean, even if they do all of that, if they make another game, I mean, people are going to be deeply skeptical, not just of the game, but of how they're going to be treated by the developer when they buy the game. Like, it's going to be such an uphill battle. I mean,
even people talk crap about EA and Activision.
Yeah.
They definitely have a much better connection with their fan base, or well,
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't call them people a fan base of No Man's Sky anymore, but they have a much better connection with their consumers than they do. I mean, to disappear for months on end.
Yeah, I mean, think of BioWare after the Mass Effect 3, controversy. Like, they didn't handle it perfectly, not by a long shot, but they didn't go into total silence mode. They released some fan service DLC for free, and they couldn't recover from how angry and upset people were, but they certainly made it better by doing something and not nothing. And the same goes for like plenty of other companies. But that is one tactic, is to go totally quiet and just hope everybody forgets. And I just don't think it doesn't work as well in this day and age when you have active communities around games, and you have a constant reminder of and then stuff like this happens. I mean,
and especially it's such a hype. It wasn't like it was a small indie game that it was like under the radar, no one knew about, that you could just be like, all right, it sucked, we're going away, we're gonna it's a game that for years, literally I would say 2 or maybe even 3 years, was constantly pushed by the press and Sony and Shadbury and Hello Games, and then you're just gonna you can't just step away from it like that. You have no choice but to discuss the issues with the game.
I mean, Hello Games, well, Sony too, both of them. I mean, Sony has a PR department. Hello Games could have on their own used some of the money they made from the game and hired a PR team that knew what they were doing and could have helped them weather that storm a lot better. I mean, whatever it would have cost, it would have been worth it, because this is just I mean, really, after the game launched and people were upset, it would have been so simple to come out and just talk about how we couldn't fit every feature into it. We're working on updates to add some of these features into it. Anything. People would have been a lot more forgiving if they'd done that. And just paying somebody who knows what they're doing with some public relations stuff would have been a great move. And Sony, I don't know what they were thinking. I think like they also could have done so much more, but it's just total silence from Sony on this as well. And a coordinated effort to just be cool to their fans would have been really nice. And it's just strange again that you can sell somebody a game and take their money and then just like walk away.
Especially nowadays when games are supported sometimes years after they come out. Mm-hmm. You have, again, the most hyped game possibly ever, not only being disastrous and not being what it was supposed to be, you're not giving any support at all. You're not even giving updates. You're making it like the company just crumbled and ceases to exist. Why do you think Sony didn't come in and try to salvage anything, though? Don't you think? I mean, I'm sure they put a lot of marketing dollars behind it. Why do you think they just stepped away?
I do not know. It's so hard to see behind the curtain of some of these PR decisions. It like Sony always bills themselves as kind of like the friends to gamers, like PlayStation, right when Xbox One and PS4 were coming out and there was so much controversy around the Xbox One. Well, the PS4 was sort of billed as the answer to that, the gamer-friendly
system, yeah.
And so there's all of that, but then, then in a situation like this, it's just they don't talk to anybody, they don't say anything, and there's thousands of people left sort of holding the bag. And I can't say why they would do that other than they're like distancing themselves from the developer, and they're washing their hands of the whole thing, and it's just done for them. I I don't know.
You would think Sony would, even before the game was released, especially to make sure that they made as much money off it as possible, they would want to step in with their PR teams and be like, all right, we know Sean Murray is, maybe this is extreme, a dumbass and doesn't really know what the hell he's doing. He's wet behind the ears because he's relatively new to the industry. Hey, Sean, don't say that you have this feature when you're sure you don't have it yet. Don't say you have multiplayer. Yeah. Don't say, and it's just like they let him go off and you know, you're putting all these marketing dollars behind the game and you're letting him say stuff that's just flat out not true or you're not sure is going to be. I couldn't picture, as much as I have my issues with Microsoft too, I couldn't picture Microsoft doing something like that. I just couldn't picture them just letting like a developer they're not sure of run free and say whatever the hell he wants to on all these different talk shows and whatever interviews.
Yeah, I don't see that. I don't see that happening. I mean, that doesn't usually happen. So, yeah. I mean, you can't control everything. And I think that maybe there was a time period where Sony just also believed all that stuff before they... I mean, at some point, before release, they probably did realize that much of it, and maybe not all of it, but much of it was falling short, which is why we didn't get, like, review copies ahead of time, you know? But I imagine that for a while they were just kind of taking Hello Games on faith, and because Sony in these relationships with the indie developers, they're not necessarily working with them on the game at all. It's largely just sort of when I've talked to other developers who have worked with Sony, it's very hands off. You know, they get money and then they get some support, but they're sort of allowed to do their own thing,
which can be a really good thing.
Which is a great thing for a lot of games, and especially these smaller games, most of which, I mean, none of which are billed as major games. They're all PSN games, you know. They're small games. They're supposed to be small. Some are great, some are not so great. And they're never very controversial because they all cost like $15, you know. So I don't know how hands-on or hands-off they were with this, but I suspect it was pretty hands-off. And Sony just took a lot of the marketing and that sort of hype building on their end. And Sean Murray, you know, he liked to go out and talk to people. He was very, sort of charismatic guy.
Key word.
Yeah, he really liked to. I mean, he talked to a lot of people, and honestly, I think part of his problem was you sort of see him in some of these interviews where people are asking him, well, does it have this? Does it have that? And it's almost like it occurs to him at the time that would be a cool thing to have in the game. So sure, yeah, it does, because, yeah, we should put that in there. You know, like, oh, good idea, we'll add that. And just so, yeah, of course it's going to have that. And then, they go back and they don't have the time, money, resources to do it. That's why I say that this should have been a Steam early release game, because a Steam early release game could have, really changed the whole dynamic of development and put it in front of gamers right off the bat, so that any of these big problems could have been resolved, before an official launch. I think that would have been a much wiser way to go with some crowdfunding and fan involvement in the process.
That's my issue with. I'm glad that Sony has a hands-off approach with any developers, but where I'm like, Sony, no, you were wrong with this one. You were charging AAA non-indie developer prices for the games and expecting the return. You should have went in there and said, okay, we're expecting this from the game, and they kind of shouldn't have had a hands-off approach with this one, because they were touting it as something that was way more than it really was.
Right.
And it just, I don't know. I honestly think between the lack of experience with from the No Man's Sky developer Hello Games and how Sony handled it, I think it was just a recipe for disaster all around.
Yeah.
Now, one quick question, totally off topic before I let you go, and thank you again for coming on. What do you think of Bethesda's approach now with review copies? They're not giving out pre-release copies, as someone who is a journalist in the industry.
They are, but like hours ahead of time instead of... I mean, I think it's really unfortunate, especially from Bethesda, because their games, well, especially Bethesda's, core games like the Elder Scrolls, they tend to be good games, but they're usually really buggy. They have a lot of problems at launch, and they're really big games. So to find a lot of this stuff, you actually need to have people taking time with the game before it releases. And I don't think it's going to be the end of the world for anybody, but I think that less information for consumers is always a negative. And I think that having fewer reviews, no matter how much, people are so angry at game journalists, and that's fine, I understand that, but having fewer reviews, having less information before a game comes out simply leaves people with a less informed or a worse informed choice on whether they should buy it, whether they should wait. Sometimes it's, should I buy this game or this game, you know?
Yeah.
I have to decide. Am I going to buy Titanfall 2 or Call of Duty, you know? And without reviews, you know, people have a hard time, you know, knowing what to do. I mean, I know that there's lots of other avenues for people now, like you know, Reddit or Twitch or YouTube. But I mean, I think that the answer isn't to make it harder for people to find information, but just to make it even bigger and easier. Like, have units or have games go out to, you know, streamers, have games go out to journalists, have more information, not less. And it's just bad for everybody. It's even going to be bad for Bethesda in the long run, because it does what trust. It's a lack of trusting, yeah. And over time, you know, if there is a big, you know, Elder Scrolls game that comes out or some other new IP from Bethesda and there's no reviews before launch and then it's terrible or it's just really buggy or something, people are going to be angry, and they'll be more angry than if they had some forewarning. And so I think it's a mistake, a public relations mistake.
It is.
And it's sad coming from Bethesda, because they were really great about reviews and easy to work with, and they, you know, we enjoy most of their games. You know, I like Dishonored 2 is one of my most anticipated games of the year. And
me too. And I didn't even really care about the first one, but I see gameplay of it. I'm like, oh my god, like it looks amazing. Yeah, it
looks really good. I mean, I think last year Fallout 4 was their like Forbes game of the year. We just vote like on our favorite games. It's and then I think Dishonored in 2012, or I think it was 2012. I think that was our game of the year. So these are like, you know, I don't understand where Bethesda's coming from. They get such accolades and such such a good critical reception that cutting access off and making it harder for gamers to get information and for the press to do their job is really kind of insulting to everybody. And the really insulting thing, I feel like, is that even though they're going to do this, they're still going to be constantly contacting journalists with like, here's our new trailer, here's some more hype, publish this. And then when it comes time to actually review the game, they're like, nope, sorry, all we want you for is marketing, you know? And that's sort of a breakdown of the way it's supposed to work, so that we can do our job, so that consumers can have as much information as possible.
And the lack of transparency that this is going to build is going to make people wary of buying. They don't understand. They don't want to be looked at as EA. You know what I'm saying? I mean, EA has done steps to make themselves better, and people still have that stigma about them. And look how damaging it was. You know, and Bethesda is going to go down the same route. Now, the final question. I lied. I have one more for you, and then we'll be done. The Switch. What do you think of it? Nintendo Switch.
I think it's a very Nintendo console. Okay. I think it's a really big gamble. I mean, it looks cool. Like, I'm kind of excited to try it, and I think it'll be useful for certain people in certain situations. But there's this nagging part of me that thinks, man, Nintendo should have just given up on the gimmicks and gone back to like making just a really good console. Mm-hmm. Just this one time, even if it was just a one-off, you know, like
just
make
to
a really strong
their fan base. Yes.
Yeah, and just to not take such a big gamble with their whole entire company. I mean, maybe that wouldn't have worked either, but it seems to me that the Switch, you know, it looks cool, but of course Nintendo is being weird about it. They're not saying anything. Also, you know, they're not telling people if it has a touchscreen. They're not telling people how much storage it has, what its battery life is like. I mean, these are like fundamental questions about to predict the machine's success. We kind of need to know more about it.
I heard a couple things, and some of them are cool. Some of them concern me, like the fact that you can only put a 128 gigabyte SD card in there. If they're trying to they swear they have all these third-party developers, which they did with the Wii too.
Yeah.
What the hell games you putting on with 128 gig? What DLC are you having? But anyway, we could go on about that till 4 in the afternoon.
Well, I think the Infinite Warfare download size is like 130 gigabytes right now if you get it with the Modern Warfare remaster. So like,
yeah,
that's the whole thing right there.
That's your whole hard drive, and that's supposed to be the hard drive in the Switch. If this is true, it's still speculation.
Yeah.
I just want to let you guys know that we don't know anything solid, but we'll have to wait and see. I don't want to see Nintendo fail. I mean, I'm excited and concerned at the same time, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Erik, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate this. I'll have a link to Erik's Twitter, and you have a YouTube channel too, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Okay. I'll have a link to both those. I'm going to put this video on YouTube in the description. Guys, thank you so much for showing up too, and I appreciate having you on the show. If something big shows up again, I'd love to talk to you again.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Have a good one. You too, guys.
All right, you too.